Verses 10 to 15. Joshua, being settled in the government, immediately applies himself to business, not to take state or to take his pleasure, but to further the work of God among the people over whom God had set him. As he that desires the office of a minister, 1 Tim 3:1, so he that desires the office of a magistrate, desires a good work, neither is preferred to be idle. He issues out orders to the people to provide for a march, and they had been so long encamped in their present post that it would be a work of some difficulty to decamp. The officers of the people that commanded under Joshua in their respective tribes and families attended him for orders, which they were to transmit to the people. Inferior magistrates are as necessary and as serviceable to the public good in their places as the supreme magistrate in his. What could Joshua have done without officers? We are therefore required to be subject, not only to the king as supreme, but to governors as to those that are sent by him. 1 Pt 2:13-14. By these officers, Joshua gives public notice that they were to pass over Jordan within 3 days. These orders, I suppose, were not given till after the return of the spies that were sent to bring an account of Jericho, though the story of that affair follows, ch. 2. And perhaps that was such an instance of his jealousy, and excessive caution, as made it necessary that he should be so often bidden as he was to be strong and of a good courage. Observe with what assurance Joshua says to the people, because God had said it to him, "You shall pass over Jordan, and shall possess the land." We greatly honor the truth of God. He gives them directions to prepare victuals, not to prepare transport vessels. He that bore Egypt upon eagle's wings would in like manner bear them into Canaan, to bring them to himself. Ex 19:4. But those that were desirous to have other victuals besides the manna, which had not yet ceased, must prepare it and have it ready against the time appointed. Perhaps, though the manna did not quite cease till they came into Canaan, ch. 5:12, yet since they had come into a land inhabited, ex 16:35, where they might be furnished in part with other provisions, it did not fall so plentifully, nor did they gather so much as when they had it first given to them in the wilderness, but decreased gradually, and therefore they are ordered to provide other victuals, in which perhaps was included all other things necessary to their march. And some of the Jewish writer, considering that having manna they needed not to provide other victuals, understand it figuratively, that they must repent of their sins, and make their peace with God, and resolve to live a new life, that they might be ready to receive this great favor. Cex 19:10-11. He reminds the 2 tribes and a half of the obligations they were under to go over Jordan with their brethren, though they left their possessions and families on this side. Interest would make the other tribes glad to go over Jordan, but in these it was an act of self-denial, and against the grain, therefore it was needful to produce the agreement which Moses had made with them, when he gave them their possession before their brethren. v13 Remember the word which Moses commanded you. Some of them perhaps were ready to think now that Moses was dead, who they thought was too hard upon them in this matter, they might find some excuse or other to release themselves from this engagement, or might prevail with Joshua to dispense with them, but he holds them to it, and lets them know that, though Moses was dead, his commands and their promises were still in full force. He reminds them of the advantages they had received in being first settled. The Lord your God hath given you rest. He has given your minds rest, you know what you have to trust to, and are not as the rest of the tribes waiting the issue of the war first and then of the lot. He has also given your families rest, your wives and children, whose settlement is your satisfaction. He has given you rest by giving you this land, this good land, of which you are in full and quiet possession. Note, when God by His providence has given us rest, we ought to consider how we may honor Him with the advantages of it, and what service we may do to our brethren who are unsettled, or not so well settled as we are when God had given David rest. 2 Sa 7:1. See how restless he was till he had found out a habitation for the ark. PS 132:4, 5. When God has given us rest, we must take heed of slothfulness and of settling upon our lees. He reminds them of their agreement to help their brethren in the wars of Canaan till God had in like manner given them rest. v 14:15. This was, reasonable in itself. So closely were all the tribes incorporated that they must needs look upon themselves as members one of another. It was enjoined them by Moses, the servant of the Lord. He commanded them to do this, and Joshua his successor would see his commands observed. It was the only expedient they had to save themselves from the guilt of a great sin in settling on that side Jordan, a sin which would one time or other find them out. Number 32:23. It was the condition of the grant Moses had made them of the land they were possessed of, so that they could not be sure of a good title to, or a comfortable enjoyment of, the land of their possession, as it is here called, v. 15, if they did not fulfill the condition. They themselves had covenanted and agreed thereunto. Number 32:25. Thy servants will do as my Lord commandeth. Thus we all lie under manifold obligations to strengthen the hands one of another, and not to seek our own welfare only, but one another's.